Hi guys and welcome back to Nodeflow. In the last video of the new Cross series we saw how to import custom characters and animations from Mixamo, but they looked all identical. So let's see together how to assign different objects like swords and shields to our agents to make our crowd look more diverse. Let's start. In Houdini, for the sake of simplicity, I'm starting with the same setup of last time. So if you want to start from here, make sure to actually follow the last video. I will delete then the crowdsource and the out, as I only want my agent, the run and the walk clip. I will then create the agent layer. This node is the key of our lesson today. Over here we need some geometry that we want to assign to our agent. So I'll create a merge pact, and over here I can add lots of different geometry. The merge pact also gives me a name attribute, and then the agent layer can use this name attribute to differentiate between the different props coming in. For the models, I'm downloading them from Sketchfab. This sword is made by Ming Hao Lo. I hope that was pronounced correctly. Then we have a Viking shield from MK, a medieval house from Young Wizard. I will import all of this with some file nodes, and then over here I will find my props. So now that I have my sword and my shield, as you can see I have a small problem. They are quite huge. So in order to fix that, we can use some transform nodes. So we can plug this one in, and this one will be 0.005 and this one can be 0.013. And if you see now, we have both of the objects in the center of the world correctly scaled based on our agent size over here. Well, that's amazing, but now we have to actually assign these props to the agent layer. So we have a layer name. I want to name this one sword layer, and I want to set my current layer to be this one. So over here I can delete it, and then I will put it to sword layer. Although it's importing everything, not only the sword, that's because we have to delete these shapes, and then here into source layer we are actually sourcing our character with no sword or shield, and then into shape binding, that's the most important part, because over here we are binding a new shape, so one of these two. I want to select my sword, and now if you can see, if you press play, well, the behavior is sort of correct, like the sword is actually following the movement of the agent, although it's not really correctly aligned and it's not really rotating correctly with the hand that is actually moving up and down. So in order to fix it, let's actually connect it to the right thumb over here. I'll go over here and I will look for my right hand thumb one. So if you check, nothing is really happening, and our sword is actually disappeared. Well, technically it's just 100 times smaller. So let's create a transform over here and let's connect it. So it's just a weird way of working in crowds, but that's how it is. So you have to scale it by 100. And now it's a little bit more correct, because you can see it's actually orientating based on the finger, although we need to rotate it. To keep everything clean, this will be my scale 1. This will be my scale 100. So I will create another transform. And with this one you basically need to play, because the orientation is a little bit weird, and that's how it is for crowd, unfortunately. So you need to do something like that, and then to move your sword into position, and after a little bit of fiddling you should have something that looks like that, or at least more or less. And now if everything is correct in the agent layer, we can just press play and our agent is actually running with a sword. That's cool. So let's do the same for the shield. Over here I want to create a new layer. I will basically use the same setup as before. So this one will be my shield. I will leave shapes empty over here, and then in use existing shape I will select my default, so my character will show up, and then I will bind my shield, in this case with the left hand. Now if you want to visualize your shield layer, you can just delete this one and visualize the shield one. And as you can see, if you orientate it at this stage correctly, and again it will take a little bit of time, it will work fine. So before continuing, I also added two color nodes. One is making the sword look orange and the other one is making the shield look blue. I thought that's better in order to visualize what's going on in the next stage. We can then remove this set current layer, and now we can add the crowdsource. Let's connect the first input and let's visualize it. As you can see, we have our agents, but we don't have our layers yet. That's why we need to go into the randomize tab, and over here into current layer we can actually choose one of these. So we have a shield layer. As you can see, everyone is having the shield layer. We can also add another one. So I want also my sword layer, and then I want also my default layer. So basically with no props. As you can see, we have what we expect, and over here you can change the wave of how many sword layer you want, how many of shield layer, and so on. What if you want the agent to have both shield and sword? Well, basically you go back to the agent layer, you add another one, you call it sword and shield layer, and then you do exactly the same thing. So in a 16th shape, you leave default on, and in this time you want to bind two shapes. So the first one will be again sword, and the other one will be shield. Because you already did the fiddling over here, now it will be just a matter of looking for the correct bone. So you can just copy paste the left hand for the shield, and over here you can copy paste this one for the sword into the transform name. Press enter, and now you have an extra layer. So if you go into the crowdsource, you should be able to find the sword and shield layer. And if you increase it a lot, you will see that most of them will have both. So I hope this is clear. I think this should be a moment to actually reflect on what we've done, and so we can go to the next step. That's beautiful, isn't it? We have the randomization that we want. We can actually control which props they should have. So if you play a little bit with the setup that we saw in the first video, you should be able to understand what's going on over here. So we have a crowd motion path, we are defining some curve for the agent to follow, and then we are actually evaluating this path, and then we have our agents. So you can see, if you go back, we have our agents actually splitting into groups. So we have randomizations in path and not only in assignments of the layers. And also this is being driven by a curve. But again, I would like to focus more on the crowdsource today. So in the setup, let's see what we can do. So we have a formation and some of the agents are splitting because of the motion paths. Then we can define some rows, we can define some columns for our agents. Very, very useful, especially in this case. And then you can change the spacing between them, or you can change it back to random, and then they will be scattered in this area size over here that you can define just by changing these values. Here you can change the number of agents. You can make lots of them or just few of them. And then into the randomize tab, you can play with different things. So I think this is the most important part of the crowdsource. I think it's amazing the level of control that we get over here. So if you have different agents coming in, so you have different characters, you can randomize the agent primitive over here. For now, we just have our character that's called Paladin. But again, you could play with this just by merging multiple agents into this one. For now, I will disable it and I will randomize the clip time. In the clip time, you can see I can basically randomize where in the time they should start moving the first leg. So basically in the start, I have everything moving in the same. And then over here, some of them are being offsetted in the clip. And so you will not be able to tell that they are actually playing the same animation. It will look a little bit more organic. Then we have our layers that we already saw. You can randomize the scale. Of course, you don't want the agents to be, I don't know, very tiny or very small. So I will just reduce the randomness to something like very small. I think like something like 0.02. And because we're using the crowd motion paths, we don't have the problem of last time. So if you visualize the crowdsource, you have the problem of last time. Some of them are going faster than they should. But this one actually evaluates the locomotion and other times. So by visualizing the last nodes, if we press play, you can see the agents are actually walking correctly as the locomotion is being recalculated correctly. So again, I love doing crowds, achieving this level of control and keeping everything pretty tidy. In the last step, we're actually adding some collisions. So if you remember, we downloaded the house, let's import it. I have my house over here, but it's pretty big compared to our agents. So I find out that I can scale it down a little bit with the transform node, so I can connect it, and this will be 0.48. And now I will create another node just to keep everything tidy, and I will name this one house. I will then create a grid, and that will serve me as the floor. So in this case, I want to template my crowd motion path, and then into the grid, I can make it pretty big. I will make the size on X 30 and the size on Y to 55. And then I will move the center on Z on of 11. Now we can create another null. This one will be called floor. Let's plug it in. And finally, let's select all these nulls. And I want to create a merge node and a final null called out. Let's visualize it. So you see the agents are actually not really avoiding the house. That's because we need a node called motion path avoid. Let's create it. Let's plug it in. And over here, it expects like a geometry to avoid. So let's connect the house. And now by visualizing the node output, we can see they are going inside of the house, but let's actually move it to something over here and you'll see the path will be readapting. So something like this, I think it looks pretty fine. A trick that I usually use is actually to create another transform node. So I will make this one a little bit smaller than where it should be, 0.3 for instance. And then this one will be the correct size for my house. And this will be the one that I will plug into my final output. So if you check this house, it's actually quite big. And so it looks like they are a little bit closer. Of course, you can play with other settings, but I found this is just a little bit of a cool trick to make sure that your agents are a little bit closer. And then you can visualize the output of all of this. I will lastly add a color node to my grid to make it a little bit darker. Something like that. And then I can press play and preview what's going on. So as you can see, they are avoiding the house. They are also playing different animations. with different layers and with different times. So I really hope you enjoyed the tutorial. I hope you're enjoying the series. If you are, please leave a like and subscribe, as this is getting every time more interesting and we are diving into more advanced topics. Thank you for staying until the end, and I will see you in the next one.